Brooke Pryor, at B.E. Pryor on Twitter, covers the Pittsburgh Steelers for ESPN, but also covers the NFL. But we're going to keep it, at least at the beginning, Steelers-centric. And we're going to start with Wilson, but not the Wilson you thought. Peyton Wilson. I know he's been a little bit, maybe a little bit on the banged up side, which I know feeds into some narratives for some people. Where are we with Raleigh's favorite son?
I don't know why when you said a different Wilson, my mind immediately jumped to Roman Wilson, which then made me realize, oh my gosh, there are so many Wilsons on this team. But Peyton Wilson, Raleigh's favorite son, I think is going to be a favorite son of Pittsburgh. He has been banged up, but it is not a knee thing. I know he's had a long injury history with that knee. I think it was Ian Rappaport who said he doesn't have an ACL, which from what I understand is not true. He does have some form of an ACL, just one that has really been through it.
Right.
He had a concussion or was in the protocol briefly after I believe it was the Bills game. So they held him out of the Detroit game. I don't really know what it says that the collective sentiment was, oh, thank goodness it's just a concussion, because concussions are serious. But I think given Peyton Wilson's injury history, of course, there's the concern that if it's, something lower body related, that could be really serious, but that was not the case. And I don't get the sense that it was a serious concussion issue because he exited the protocol pretty quickly.
Right.
But he's been, I think, one of the bright spots of training camp and of this rookie class. I mean, the rookie class has been pretty banged up. Troy Fautano's been hurt. Same thing, Roman Wilson. But Peyton Wilson, it's clear that he's going to play a role in this defense. I mean, he's really, I think, a really heavy hitter. I think he complements Landon Roberts and Patrick Queen really well because he's a little bit of a different body type. He's tall and lanky. I think he will be good in coverage. He's gotten lost a couple times in the first preseason game, but all of the foundation is there for him. And I think that there's a lot of really encouraging things. He's a Pittsburgh guy, a Pittsburgh Steelers type guy through and through, but I have given him grief because during training camp in the cafeteria, he was wearing an Inside Wolfpack shirt, I think every single day. Every day. And I also heard that he said on the local radio show here that he grew up a UNC fan and then realized that, they were kind of a wine and cheese program. And I walked up to him when I heard that he said that, and I said, I got a bone to pick with you. And Peyton Wilson is the most mild-mannered, sweet, Southern, just all-around good old boy. And I said that, and he looked like I kicked him or like he had done something really wrong. So I got a bone to pick with you. And then he said, what I do? And I said, I heard you called UNC a wine and cheese crowd. And he said, get out of here. And he walked away. So apparently he turns off the Southern charm when it comes to the UNC State rivalry or lack thereof. So I look forward to more of that this season.
I could be wrong. Did he not commit initially to North Carolina before flipping to NC State? It's very possible that I am wrong.
You are absolutely right. So, we got a real Benedict Arnold situation here.
Oh, my gosh.
But the Steelers love him. It's not like, he committed to the Ravens or the Browns and then flipped to the Steelers. They can approach him with no baggage, unlike the baggage that I carry in because of who my student loans go to.
By the way, so if Peyton Wilson does in fact have an ACL, that's fine, good, probably better than not having one. But if you didn't have one, you couldn't tear it. So there is that positive. There is a former pitcher for the Mets who they ultimately, I think, traded to the Blue Jays, R.A. Dickey, who won a Cy Young and had no ulterior collateral ligament in his elbow, so he couldn't tear that. So
really, it sounds like an ACL or a UCL or any of that stuff. It kind of sounds like an appendix. Like, what's the point if all it does is get hurt? I am far from a scientist and a doctor, so people listening will probably tell me, no, those are very important body parts, ligaments, tendons, but all I hear is that they just get hurt, so, maybe the next evolution of human being won't have those. We'll just all be born without them.
It's sort of like, when all these electric cars, we don't need engine oil, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know what? I think that we're just coming up with a better future for 2050.
I don't know if people are learning anything or not. Brooke Pryor covers the Steelers for ESPN at BE Pryor on Twitter here. So at the beginning of training camp, Russell Wilson is the one, but it's an open competition. My read on what I have seen is that Fields has shown higher end but lower floor. Wilson's gap between the bottom and the top is more narrow. But Mike Tomlin, even though he says it's still open, he's probably leaning towards Russ, no?
I would say that's right, and I would also go as far to say I don't know how open this competition ever was.
Right.
The thing is, I think in the Steelers' mind, it was never really open, right? I mean, they say that to try to get the best out of both guys so that you're not, demoralizing Justin Fields from the time his trade happens, but everyone in that building knows that this has been Russell Wilson's job. I think the one thing that made it at least somewhat of a conversation was Russell Wilson's calf injury, because all of a sudden he's sidelined for the first 2-3 weeks of camp, and Justin Fields is getting all these reps with the ones. He looked really good in camp, but he was not the second coming of Dan Marino. He was not the Messiah come down to earth in Latrobe. And I think that that's what it would have taken. We would have needed to see touchdown Jesus on the practice field at St. Vincent College, and that was not the case. He performed, I think, looked better than he did in Chicago at times. Of course, this is camp in the preseason, but some of the issues he had there were still apparent in terms of, not making his reads quickly enough, holding on to the ball too long, things that were real red flags and were part of the reason that Chicago moved on from him in favor of Caleb Williams. I think that you're spot on that Russell Wilson has a higher floor and a lower ceiling, but at this point, the Steelers kind of feel like, well, we want to give this team the best chance to win, so we want to go with the quarterback that will make the fewest mistakes. That's the veteran, that's the safe choice. But I would also point out that that was why they drafted Kenny Pickett, and we saw how that went. So you kind of wonder how much margin of error Russell Wilson will have. I think that has only shrunk with the time that we've seen Justin Fields with the ones, because it gives the Steelers a better idea of what they have on the bench going into the season.
Brooke Pryor is joining us here on the Adam Gold Show. The division is super competitive, too. I mean, I know there are a lot of people who think Cincinnati is the best team, or Baltimore is the best team, or maybe it's the Browns. I don't hear a lot of the Steelers are the best team, but I think the Steelers are good. But the division is there's probably the smallest gap between the top and the bottom as there is in any division in football.
I would say that's right. I mean, I really think that you can make an argument for any team to win the division and any team to lose the division. And I know that that's kind of a cop-out, but it's true, because even though the Steelers might not have the most talented roster, and they definitely have the most precarious quarterback situation, although I think there's a strong case to be made for the Browns and Deshaun Watson because of his injury history. But the Steelers also have the Mike Tomlin effect. And, however you want to discount it or, dismiss it, whatever, it's still real that he has not had a season below 500. He's made the playoffs with teams that are just patchwork units, and he figures out a way to get the most out of the rosters he has. Now, there's also a conversation to be had that he is very responsible for constructing those rosters. But I do think that because of that, you can't count the Steelers out. I think there's a better chance that they win the division than they lose the division because of that Mike Tomlin intangible. But I mean, the Ravens got better. The Bengals got better. I'm still interested to see Joe Burrow coming off of that wrist injury, because I think that is far more significant than the calf injury, than the lower body injuries. And talk about an injury-prone guy, he has had a lot of issues. And so his health is going to really determine how the Bengals season goes. But, you can say that for any team in the division.
Right.
But, I mean, I'm excited to cover the AFC North because there are so many storylines and just a lot of good football that will happen in the second half of the season for the Steelers.
Brooke Pryor is joining us here on the Adam Gold Show. You mentioned the injury history of Deshaun Watson. I actually think it's as much the performance history of Deshaun Watson as it is the injury history. I just don't think he is nearly the quarterback that he looked like he was going to be X amount of years ago. I don't even know how many years ago now. Before everything fell apart in his personal life, he has not returned to being the same quarterback. I don't have to get into the psychology of it, but sometimes stuff like that happens away from the game, and it really eats away at your own confidence and your ability to play. Sometimes the subconscious deals with it differently than the conscious. Let me ask you one thing away from this division real quick. Jerry Jones, the owner of the Cowboys, I wish for everyone to have his confidence and his level of deflection's not the right word. So he has essentially said, I know they signed CeeDee Lamb to a big contract. They're probably going to do the same thing with Dak Prescott. I will take the 0 for thinking, hey, I think Jerry's going to burn it all down because the Cowboys, as they aren't good enough to win a Super Bowl, so why not start over? But apparently he was just playing the waiting game to try to save $1 when they probably shouldn't pay two exorbitant contracts to players that aren't ultimately going to help them win a Super Bowl, because that's what Jerry wants before he's done in ownership. But he says, I've been there. I've done it all. I know how to do this. He didn't do any of it. Jimmy Johnson did it. Why are we the only people that remember that?
Because we don't have Jerry Jones' bank account, and that can go a long way to helping your confidence. I think that I wish that I had the confidence of Jerry Jones and just the lack of awareness. I mean, this guy saw it's like that he saw something on sale for Labor Day weekend and thought, no, I'm going to wait to see if prices drop after Labor Day weekend, and then I'm going to make my big purchase, knowing full well that, like, the price is only going to go up. You had an opportunity to get guys at, less of a bargain or more of a bargain. It was never going to be cheap to sign CeeDee Lamb. It was never going to be cheap to try to sign Dak Prescott. But the longer you wait, the more expensive it gets. So I don't understand that rationale, but I don't understand a lot of things that Jerry Jones does. And I guess that's because I still have to look for sales. I'm actually not a billionaire, contrary to whatever my Wikipedia page says. I, have to bargain bin hunt, and the Cowboys don't do that. The Cowboys can pay a premium because Jerry Jones is happy to pay a premium, and because of that, he's going to let his ego get in the way. And some of these negotiations, it ultimately works out pretty well for the players in terms of their bottom line and getting paid. But overall, it hurts your team because he dragged his feet so long to get CeeDee Lamb signed that he finally signs when there's 10 days left of the season. And yeah, he's been training on his own in South Florida, but that's not a football workout. That's not being with the team and game planning and everything else. Like, there's still a learning curve and an adjustment phase that he's going to have to go through. And because of that, it probably will not be a seamless start to the season for the Cowboys, even if they have all the talent, because you just can't build that chemistry and you can't, just pick right up where you left off if you've been away from the team for this long.
Hamstring injury in 3, 2, 1. That's generally what happens. I hope it doesn't. He is a dynamic player, one of the best 2 or 3 wide receivers in the sport. Brooke Pryor, go stretch, get ready for the season, and we will talk again very soon. My friend, I appreciate your time.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.